Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay and see my screen. So does someone mind just typing in the question box that you're able to see everything and hear me all right? Okay, Deanna says we're good. All right, and Maria as well. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you for joining everything tonight. Tonight we're going to look at the Senior Management Project. So I hope you find this information valuable, and let's just get going from there. So I'm just gonna, I'll briefly introduce myself here. So usually we don't use the webcam, but I figured I want to put a face to the voice. So my name is Jarrett Chung Smith, and I work with the Ministry of Agriculture. I'm a youth development specialist, and one of my jobs is to manage the senior management project for the 4-H program. So I'm just going to turn off my webcam now. There we are. All right, so I know some of you have been on the webinars before, so you've been over this, but just if you're new, I just want to cover a few webinar best practices. So I'm going to ask that you all keep yourself on mute for the webinar. We tend to have a little bit of background noise when microphones are left on, so that would be great. You will notice that your microphone, you're currently muted by the organizer. In the past, we have allowed you to ask questions via the microphone, but since it's just me, I'm doing both presenting and monitoring of the questions tonight. I'm going to keep you on mute. So during the presentation, I ask that you just write your questions in the box, and I'll get to those. At the end, I'll have a little bit of time for a question period where I'll let you unmute yourself, and we can do questions that way if you desire. So if you're having any technical difficulties, again, just type your message into the question box and we'll try to help you out. But if it doesn't work out for you, the best bet is probably just to close down the program and reload it, and hopefully things work out for you there. All right, so just to get going, I first want to ask you a couple questions here. So I'm just going to launch a poll and ask you to participate. All right, so you should see the poll here. So the question is, how are you involved in 4-H? I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that poll. Alrighty, so it looks like it's 100% leaders here tonight. Okay, so perfect. It just gives me an idea of how to tailor who I'm speaking to, and I'll try to give you guys examples and cover off the best way of how you guys can succeed in the project and helping your members with the Senior Management Project. So I have one additional poll for you. I'll launch right now. There it is. The question has, have you been involved with the Senior Management Project in the past? So in any capacity, whether you did one as a member in the past or as a project leader. All right, share the results there with you. Okay, so 80% no, 20% yes. Okay, so a mix of experience with senior management, but either way, I hope that you do find some valuable information from this project, whether you're familiar or not. Alrighty, so I just want to go over our agenda for tonight, which shouldn't be more than an hour tonight, but we're going to cover most everything that is major when being involved with the Senior Management Project. So we'll start in an obvious place with what is a Senior Management Project? And next, we're going to go through each of the steps in completing a project. So it goes from choosing the project topic, planning the project, actually completing your project, and completing the record book. We'll talk about evaluation of the project, both from member evaluating their own self and then the leader evaluating, and finally marking of the project. And then we'll just finish off with a few quick tips to help both you and the member succeed in completing a senior management project. And then I'll give you a few available resources that'll be beneficial to completing the senior management project. All right, so what exactly is a senior management project? Well, a senior management project is an advanced project for senior 4-H members related to a specific project area, and it's completed over a 10 to 12 month period. So I have the project objectives listed here, and those are to challenge 4-H senior members who have acquired the basic skills of project work to proceed with a more complex self-directed project. It's designed to help develop advanced skills and knowledge in their respective project area, and to provide more detailed and thorough records of multiple project management. So unlike a standard 4-H project, which typically ranges through required 3 to 6 months, this project is required to be completed over 10 to 12 months. So it's quite time consuming, and we'll go through all the responsibilities in completing a project like this. So one question we often get is how a senior management differs from a self-determined project. And the key here is that senior managements must be related to a specific project offering, whereas self-determined projects is essentially the same, but it's on a topic that's not currently offered in the projects that we have for 4-HPC. All right, so we'll begin by looking at choosing a project. And in choosing a project, it's important that the member discusses with his or her leader the options for senior management projects in his or her specific project area. So the best place to start with this is looking at your project-specific regulations. So senior management, you may have noticed this, is listed as the last unit on each of the project-specific regulations. So here I provided the example for the beef project, so it's listed as Unit 8. And in each of the project regulations, it'll show you the requirements for the project, who's eligible, and it'll also give you a number of suggestions or examples for projects that would meet the senior management requirement. So it's important to note that these projects aren't limited to the examples that are provided. These are just suggestions of ones that have been completed in the past, and also the level of responsibility that we are expecting from a senior management project. Yeah, all right. Are there any questions related to choosing a project, or am I good to continue on? Alrighty, I'm not seeing any, so we'll go to the next slide here. All right, so once a project topic is chosen, the next step is to actually plan the project. And for this, a member is tasked with writing an outline of the project. And this includes completing 2 elements, including the information sheet, which is on pages 4 and 5 of the Senior Management Record Books. We'll talk a little bit about these record books in detail later, but there are 2 available, one for livestock and one for non-livestock. But this section is the exact same. The second element that must be completed in planning is a monthly plan. So a member needs to create a monthly plan for each of the 10 to 12 months that they plan to do their project, just to give a sense of what's going to be taking place over the project. So it's good that they meet with the project leader to ensure that these goals they have to complete each month are both reasonable and achievable. So let's talk a little bit about each of these elements further. So the project plan can be completed by answering the questions on the information sheet, which is pages 4 and 5 of the Senior Management Record Book, like I mentioned. The information sheet has some basic information to fill out, and then it asks 2 specific questions on it. And so these questions are, doing this project, I want to learn, and outline your reasons for selecting this project. So it's important that the member includes lots of detail in describing this project. The information collated on this plan is what I'll use in reviewing the project proposal before approving it. So I've listed here a few key questions that are important to consider in completing the information sheet. So what's the main idea? So what is the project that you have decided on? Why did you choose this project? What are your goals and what do you hope to learn? And what are your resources? Who are you going to look to lean on, and what are you going to use in order to succeed in your project? So the second element here is the detailed monthly plan. So members will submit a detailed monthly plan outlining what they plan to complete each month. It's fairly straightforward there. This is quite basic, and it might vary from the final project, but it does provide a good guideline for what they plan to consider as their project progresses. So since these projects are completed over 10 to 12 months, it's very important that the members are working through different aspects related to the project each month. So in creating this plan, there's a few questions the member wants to consider. So it's, what is your plan of action? What do you want to accomplish over the 10 to 12 months? When do you plan on starting the project, and when do you plan on finishing the project? So there's often been cases where members have a difficult time filling the 10 to 12 month requirement, especially in livestock projects that have shorter growing periods. Say swine, for example, they grow fairly quickly. So how might you do a senior management project for a year? So it's important that members consider what they can do before they get their project animals, for example. So the member may consider a research component. So where are you going to get your hogs? What are you looking for in selecting your hogs, maybe? So breed, traits, things like that, researching a feeding plan. So there's all sorts of different research components that can be included in the senior management, and that's a good way to continue working on your project even if you don't have your animal and filling the 10 to 12 months. You might also consider if, say, they're doing a market animals as their project, a feedlot maybe, how are they going to sell the project at the end of the projects at the end of the year? So they might consider maybe a marketing plan. How are they going to execute selling the animals? All right, so once each of those elements are completed, the information sheet and the monthly plan needs to be submitted to the youth development staff person designated for the senior management project for approval. And so that is me, and this is my contact information here. So once that is there, you can send off that information to me, and I will take a look at the project proposal. I might ask or reply with some questions or suggestions on how the project plan can be more detailed. But ultimately, once we work through that, I'll be able to complete an approval letter, and then the member is ready to start their project. So again, just to reiterate, the project must be approved before the start of the project. And just so you are aware, the final date for project approval is March 31st of the project here. Are there any questions about project planning or the approval process? I'm not seeing any in the question box here, but if you have some, you want to type those in there, I'll give you a few seconds. All right, no questions. We're flying through this. All right, so the next area I want to talk about is actually completing the project. So like I mentioned, there are 2 record books for the senior management project, one for livestock, which is publication 1550. Oh, sorry, that's a typo. It's 5050, and the other one is 5052 for non-livestock. So like all 4-H project units, record keeping is a key requirement to achievement. And for the senior management projects, though, the record book is quite flexible. So given the uniqueness of each member's project, they're all going to be quite different. So these record books only act as a guide. So there's just basic pages For example, in the livestock project, it's obviously good to keep financial records and feeding records. So those are some of the basic pages that you would find other record books that are included in the livestock senior management book. So members are definitely encouraged to be creative in these record books, and a tremendous amount of detail is expected in the final project submission. So I will make these resources available for you to download following the project, along with some of the other resources we'll cover as we continue. All right, so like I said, the record book is quite flexible, but there are 5 key elements that must be included in order for the project to be considered complete. So I want to go through each of these elements in a little bit of detail to give you a better idea of what is expected in the final project submission. So a report on the member's achievement presentation, a report of important project activities. They need to include a project story, a clipping page, and a member self-evaluation along with a leader evaluation. So let's talk a little bit about these. All right, so the first one is the achievement presentation. So senior managements differ from standard project units in that they aren't eligible to be exhibited in standard unit classes. For example, a member with, say, raising 3 steers, they can't exhibit one of them in a market class, a standard market class. In addition, these projects don't necessarily need to be exhibited at Achievement Day in order to achieve. So in the case of the senior management project, an achievement presentation is required, and this can be completed in a number of ways. So here included some examples of how a project might be presented. And it really depends and varies where the presentation might take place. So it could be completed at a club meeting or a field day, but ultimately the presentation and the report that's included in the record book should explain how you told other 4-H members in your club and district what you learned in your senior management project. So this report needs to be written on a separate piece of paper and included in the project record book. Next, we have important project activities. So the purpose of this page is to provide commentary on all your project activities. So it's essentially a record of headlines that happened during your project year, which include both good and bad. So keep a good record of everything that happened over the project year. And it's important, one piece that's important is that this page is different than general club activities. So things like fundraising or different club events, that's separate. This page is specifically commentary on activities related to the project area. So I've included some examples here. These are specific to livestock, but these are kind of the headlines that might be included. So just like the achievement presentation report, this needs to be completed on a separate page as well, and it needs to be included in the project record book. All right, so the third element is the project story. And this is a really important piece of the project. It really kind of sums up the entire project year. So it's really the member's opportunity to share the story of the project year with the reader, who is ultimately me in marking it. So there's several things that should be discussed in this section, and those include your successes and mistakes during the project. How did you feel about those? What you learned and who helped you? What changes would you make if you were to repeat the project? So it's always good to reflect on how your project year went. And then what are your plans for next year? So maybe this senior management project was a stepping stone to a breeding project the following year or something like that. So what are your plans for next year? So just like the other two, write this report on a separate piece of paper and include it in your project record book. So the next one is the clipping page, which is kind of an add-on to the project story. So the finished record book should include a minimum of 1 page of pictures, but more are always encouraged. And so pictures really help your project come alive and can really support both the project activities and the project story pages. So including lots of pictures as to your project activities and how your project progressed will really give me a good sense of what the member has accomplished over the year. And the fifth and final element is the evaluation. So members are required to complete a self-evaluation, and the members should discuss what the project has taught them in terms of things like self-reliance, responsibility, and time management. So this is a good opportunity, again, to reflect on the project year, and members should question every aspect of the project to its value and success. All right. I'll stop again here. Are there any questions about any of the 5 requirements in completing a project? I'm not seeing any. All right, we'll carry on. All right, so since you are all leaders here, I saw at the beginning, you're probably wondering what exactly is the role of the leader. So it is encouraged that the project leader meet with the member monthly to provide ongoing encouragement and direction. So since this is an advanced project and will likely involve many moving parts over many months, it's important that the leader is there to provide support and help and keep the member focused and on track throughout the duration of the project. So this begins with choosing the project, working with the member choosing the project all the way until completing the record book and the evaluation, which is the next piece I want to speak on here. So the leader is involved with evaluating the project on 2 levels. So the first one is the inspection of the project. Senior management projects are required to be inspected 3 times per year. So for livestock projects, these are the standard husbandry checks. For non-livestock senior management, it would be a check of the project's progress. So 3 times are required for the inspection. And then once the record book is complete, the leader is also required to complete the leader portion of the senior management project scorecard. So that's publication number 140I, which I will show you here. So this is the scorecard that the leader will use. It's a list of rankings between excellent to a fail on a number scale system. It's out of a total of 25 marks. One important piece to note on this is that the leader evaluation must not be completed by the parent of the member. So the project leader needs to be someone that's not the parent. The reason for this, we'll talk a little bit later about how senior management can be used towards external high school credit. So it's important that a neutral party is involved with scoring and evaluating these projects. One other thing that's really important is that you include some detailed comments in each of the sections for both the member and then also myself. In marking it, it really helps me in seeing your perspective on how the member did with the project, as you are firsthand witness of what the project actually involved. All right, so once the evaluation is completed by the leader, it's important that the leader certify that the project work and record book are completed in full. So we do ask that if you feel that the record book is not complete, you provide suggestions for improvement to the member before submitting. So, I mean, I'd rather you not submit an incomplete record book, so make sure it has all the detailed elements, as I'd like to give out less fails than passes with these projects. So make sure everything's in there and certify that it's all there. So just to recap the project submission here, the finished project should include the record book, which it has to include those 5 elements we talked about. The project approval letter that you'll get from me before the project starts, include that in the record book at the very front. And then also the completed scorecard with 140I with the leader portion filled out. And then I'll use that to complete my marking on that. So it's very important to remember that I can only mark what is included in the record book. So like I said, detail is expected in these record books given the level of project that it is, and I can only mark based on what I see in the record book. So I do ask that you allow enough time for marking. So I generally try to have marking completed for books in 4 weeks, but that's not always the case. So if you are wondering on the status of a record book that you've submitted at any time, do not hesitate to reach out to me and I can update you on that. So once the project is submitted, I will use this side of the scorecard, the staff evaluation, to mark the project. So this score is graded out of 75, which is combined with the 25 from the leader portion to get the final mark. So as you can see, the events, project story, presentation, and evaluation that we discussed earlier are all elements that are used in the scoring of this. So it's very important that these are included. And it's also a good idea to have the member reviews the scorecard, both the leader portion and the staff evaluation portion, as they're working through their project, just to ensure they are meeting all the requirements so they can achieve the highest possible mark. So the passing achievement mark for senior management projects is 75%. If a member doesn't achieve 75% on the initial marking, I will return the project with suggestions and improvement, and the member will have another opportunity to resubmit their project for marking, an opportunity to earn the passing mark. I'll just stop once again. Are there any questions regarding project submission evaluation or anything like that? Alrighty. So, oh, I see one. Okay, so Margaret has asked, this card seems to relate to the livestock project. Is there a different one for non-livestock? So no, there isn't. This is the one we use. I mean, some of these obviously don't apply, such as herd record and things like that. But for the most part, they are fairly general. If you really take a look at the points of consideration, they're fairly general. And obviously, I'll use my judgment in marking based on what the project is related on. I hope that answers your question, Margaret. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any there. All righty. So like I mentioned before, senior management projects can be used as a stepping stone to the external credit program that 4HBC offers. So just to give you an example here, members might question why they should complete such an advanced project such as a senior management. Well, they do have an opportunity to earn grade 12 external credits. So you can see here by obtaining your project PIN certification, combining that with the 4H Senior Management Project Certificate, it will equal an honor PIN and you'll get grade 12 external credit. So it's a great opportunity to continue project work and also gain high school credits from there. All right, so I just want to summarize the steps to completion. We're moving quite quickly through this, but we'll have lots of time for questions if you have anything at the end. So like I said, you begin by choosing the project topic. So the best place to start here is to review the project-specific regulations, and those will provide some suggestions in developing a project, but remember that you're not limited to those, but that's a good place to start. Next is planning the project. So complete the information sheet and the monthly plan and submit that to me for as a project proposal, and then wait for approval from me before beginning the project. The next step is to carry out the project, and like we discussed, there are 5 key requirements that must be completed: the achievement presentation, the important project activities, the project story, the clipping page, and the member self-evaluation. Once that is complete, there's evaluation portion where the leader will, throughout the project, leader will conduct 3 project inspections over the 12-month project period, and they'll use the project scorecard 140i to evaluate the record book. And then finally is marking, where you will submit the completed record book to youth development staff, which is me, and I will complete the marking and then return the project record book to the leader. Were there any other questions before we go through the last few slides? Not seeing any there. All right. So just to wrap up tonight, I wanted to provide you with a few quick tips that will be beneficial to both the member completing the project and the project leader in order to succeed with a senior management project. So make sure that you're eligible by checking the project regulations. And so that is the last unit of each project is listed as senior management. Seek approval from a youth development staff member, as they may be able to provide helpful suggestions. So feel free to contact me at any time in the planning process. During the project, I'll do my best to reach out during the project to see how the project is progressing. And then also prior to submitting for evaluation, you feel free to reach out to me as well. If the project you have in mind does not meet the specified time period, then talk to myself, and I might be able to work with yourself and the member in coming up with some ideas on expanding your project. So like I mentioned, a research component is always a way a member is able to lengthen their project a little bit. Next is to make sure the outline you send is thorough. So provide details on why, how, when, and what you hope to learn from the project. Like I said, detail is very important with a project like this because it's very unique and self-directed. So as much detail as possible provides me with a good idea for what the member plans to achieve with their project. And when the youth development person writes their approval letter, they may ask you some questions. This is to help you think about your project and make it easier for others to see where you are going. So just a couple more quick tips here. So just like your outline, make sure your completed project is detailed and thorough. You should leave the marker with no questions about what you did. For instance, putting etc. is not thoroughly explaining what you did. So include lots of details such as schedules, agendas, checklists. One thing that is suggested with senior or with self-determined projects as well is to get yourself a cardboard box and kind of put everything related to your project in that box, so you know where it is and you have everything that you can include in your final submission. Spelling and grammar mistakes make it hard to understand. So check that your project doesn't have any of those. Like I said, it's very helpful that the leader checks to make sure the project is full prior to submitting. Include pictures with your project. So images help your project come alive, and it's a great way to show off all of the hard work that the member has completed during the year. And finally, work together with your leader. They will help you with your project planning and staying on track with your record book. When sending in completed projects, make sure the leader has completed their comments portion of the scorecard. Alrighty. Oh, so we have a question here. So Marie has asked, who does the leader submit the husbandry checks to throughout the project? So they don't need to be submitted throughout the project. They just need to be included in the final submission that to show that 3 husbandry checks has been completed. So with just like any other project how a member is required to have a husbandry check through the year, it's the same sort of situation. Just make sure that those sheets are completed and included in the record book, so I can see that an inspection has been completed 3 times in the year. Are there any other questions? Not seeing any. Okay. So don't be afraid to type in that box if you have any questions here, and we have a few more minutes, so that'll be good. So I just want to go over the resources that we touched on here, specific to the senior management project. So regulations specific to your project. Oh, I have another question. So does a non-livestock project have a similar check? So non-livestock projects, it's a little different in that there's no standardized inspection. Basically, it's just to check that there's been project progress. Whether a member is building something, or say they're doing a clothing project and doing a senior management wardrobe, say, just to ensure that the project is on track and the member's actually progressing with the project. So it's a little more self-guided in that way compared to the livestock one, which is a more developed sheet. Can you please give an example of a non-livestock project that would be 10 to 12 months long? So the clothing one I just used, a senior management wardrobe, is an example that a member did this year, in that they were required to, I guess, create an entire wardrobe from scratch. Another example might be a gardening project. A member might create a small greenhouse. They could do a greenhouse project, building the greenhouse, growing their own vegetables, things like that in their backyard. So there's many different examples. It's really, you can, I mean, it's out of the box, out of the ordinary kind of thinking. I mean, projects aren't limited to anything as long as they meet the requirements. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a few more examples there, Marie. Members don't usually see scores. Is this different for senior management projects? No, I mean, if the member doesn't see the score, that's fine, as long as you insert the inspection scorecards in the record book. They don't necessarily need to see them, but I mean, it is good for the member to see how they have scored on their inspection, whether they need to make improvements and things like that. So I'll get back to some more questions as we wrap up here, but just I want to go over a few of the resources we have. So like I said, the regulations specific to your project will give you examples of different types of projects that a member could do. We talked about publication 140I, which is the senior management project scorecard. So that has both the leader evaluation and the staff evaluation on it. Publication 5050 is the senior management record book for livestock, and publication 5052 is the senior management record book for non-livestock. So you'll notice in your little control panel here, there are 3 handouts provided for you in PDF here. So I will leave this webinar open at the end if you want to download those, the scorecard and the 2 record books. But if you don't get a chance to do that today, all of these publications are available by visiting the 4-H website, by looking for their resources and accessing their publications there. All right, so that is all I have tonight. I will open it up for a few more questions if you have any. I haven't seen any more come in here. But if I haven't answered your question fully, and you'd like to ask a further question, what I will do is I'm going to unmute everyone here. I see all your microphones are on, so if you don't want me to hear you, click to mute yourself. But if you do have a question you want to ask verbally, just raise your hand here and we can get to you. Alrighty, I'm not seeing any right now, but I will stick around for a few minutes if anything comes to mind. So the final slide I had for you, I just wanted to update you on upcoming webinars that 4HBC is offering. So there is only one more scheduled right now, and that is on Wednesday, January 31st. where Carla Berry and myself will be doing a webinar on Junior Leader 4-H projects. So be sure to sign up for that one. If you haven't signed up already, feel free to visit the 4-H website, and under the resources and leader training, you'll find the information to register for those. And all webinars are going to take place at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Keep in mind that new webinar topics are going to be scheduled shortly. So check back to the 4-H website and look out for some e-blasts from 4-H BC, as we'll have several new webinars coming your way soon. So that is all I have for you this evening. I hope you found this useful. I see a couple more questions have come in, but if you had all your questions answered, feel free to head out now. But again, I thank you for joining, and I hope to see some project proposals come in for senior managements this year. All right, so questions. Marie, your question here. So the senior management projects are really an expanded version of the junior 4-H project. Do you mind expanding on that a little bit further? The requirements seem very similar except for the timeline. So I think you're meaning the junior leader project. Is that what you're meaning? I mean, for a junior leader project, do you mind, people that have your microphones on, just muting yourself? I'm getting a little background noise. I'll click to mute. Here we are. Yeah, so yeah, I guess the timeline's a little bit different. And a junior leader project doesn't necessarily need to be project specific. I mean, I'm not, I don't really know the ins and outs of the junior leader project. That's not really my department, but on January 31st, Carla will be able to explain that. So maybe I could provide you a little bit of more detail about the difference of those afterwards. And also you asked if I missed one, will I be able to view? I think you're meaning, will the webinars be available at a later date? Yes, they are going to be. We're going to release them on the 4-H website so they can be viewed afterwards. Perfect. We'll see you on the 31st for that webinar. Thanks. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions at this time, but if something comes to mind in the next few days, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be in the office and I can definitely help you with that. If you have a member who's considering a senior management project but needs a little more direction or has some questions, again, feel free to ask me and I will do my best to help you out. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a good night.